Hey everyone, Marcus here from the Ashland Fly Shop, and today we're going to be tying a tube fly with some of the new tying materials that we have here in the shop, so follow along with us. So today I'm going to be tying on the Flexi tube from Pro Sport Fisher, and with these tubes, unless I'm tying a longer pattern, I will just cut the back at the very beginning and just give myself something similar to if you were tying on a standard tube, how long your junction would be at the back. And I like to do that at the very beginning of the process. So I'm going to start tying my thread. Unlike a shank where you have to secure any trailing wire or hook, a tube you just start right at the back of the fly. And I'm not going to go through the fly very much, just leave a little bit of thread there. Give it a little bit of a base, but not much, just to where my rear station is going to end, which will be somewhere right in there. And the fly that I'm tying off of is one that I sat down to tie the other day with some of these new materials. And I'm going to set up a really simple composite loop on the rear station of the fly here, and I'm going to use ice dub in shell pink. And for this loop, I'm just going to start to think about it. Everything towards the kind of top end will wrap first, and everything on the back end is going to wrap after that. And there's a lot of different ways to do your loops, but I like to just keep it as simple as possible. And as I wrap that forward, I'll have Senyo's barred metallic predator wrap, which we now stock in quite a few colors. And this stuff, when you cut it really thin on these composite loops, it ends up being a really stiff propping material, which is why I like it. So I'll just cut a little bit out of there and lay it down. And I will have in my loop, I will have two different diameters of this material. That's a little bit, quite a bit there. But I will take just less than an inch there and clip it off. And I'm just going to place that over the rear portion of the loop, of the composite loop. And then right at the very back, I will tie in a couple that are a little bit longer. Just clip those off. Put those right at the very back. And for the rear loop, that's about all I do. In the front loop, I'll often do Arctic Fox, but in the rear, that's about all I need. And then I just slide it off the table, put it in my fingers right there, get a dubbing loop going, bring the thread forward, and I will just put a little bit of wax on the thread in the loop. Just going to slide it, and the loop is going to come halfway in between those materials. Unlike when I do Arctic Fox, which I'll just tie in with the stems in there, or similar to how you do Ostrich with just the stems, the loop you want it to be about halfway through there. And then I'll just give my dubbing twister a spin here. And you can see how everything just sticks out really spiny there. And I will pull everything out. And this dubbing on the back end is going to just create a very circular surface for everything to sit on. And as you're making these wraps, especially with the predator wrap, you want to make sure every quarter wrap you're coming in to pick and pull things apart so that it doesn't all get tied down on itself. And I'm just going to tie off that loop there. And that can even be picked out a little bit more. And it just gives it this, more than some other materials out there, it just gives it this really nice, big profile that helps prop everything out. I'm just going to clip it a little bit there. And then I'm going to start another dubbing loop right at the base there. And you can kind of pinch things down just to keep it all in check as you start with your next loop. And this one, I'm going to do a little bit smaller here. Kind of trap some of those fibers. I'm just going to lock them back down. Then I'll put some wax on this loop. And always with my ostrich, for whatever reason, I like to keep it under tension the whole time before I'm working with the feather at all. And it seems to, when I try to get the stems of these feathers in there, seems to help with that process. For the ostrich, we have a new ostrich plume in the shop here, which are barred ostrich plumes from MFC. And they're really nice. And you can just see all the color. I think the pink and black out of all of them seems to stick out the most. So that's the one we're going to use in here. Something to think about that I've been thinking about recently with ostrich when I clip it off is just how you hold it. I used to hold it up here and then clip down there, but the thing that I've been thinking about recently is you want to get a hold on that feather really close to where you're clipping it. And the reason that that helps is when you're trying to get it in your loop and get all those stems as closely aligned here as you can, really holding that feather under tension is going to help. Just going to get about an inch worth of ostrich off of there. Open up the loop and just slide those stems right in there. And then I really like to, with ostrich more so than anything else, is just spin really slowly so that you can look as it's spinning and make sure that nothing's getting trapped and that everything's sticking out the way you want it. And then I'm just going to grab some of these fibers and make sure that your wraps are right over those last couple wraps from the composite loop. And as the ostrich wants to splay forward, just grab it back and make sure that that next wrap helps keep them all the direction that you want them going. Break those stems there. And then I'll tie those off. And you can see when you kind of flare everything out, that ostrich is just giving that nice profile that we really like to see in these flies. And then over this rear station, I'm going to put a little bit of grizzly barred flashabou in the same color on each side here. And that's just going to give give a little variation in those colors that are coming off the back of the fly there. Fold these back. I can already tell this is going to be a fly that I'm going to like to fish. And that's something to think about when you're tying flies is, you know, there's a lot of different stuff going on out there in terms of what people are tying. And I think that it's important just to let yourself tie the things that you want to fish, more so than just, you know, trying to tie things because other people are doing them. That's really all of my fly tying, is just different ideas that when I'm on the water, I end up wanting to fish. Because when you open your box and you haven't hooked a fish in a while, the fly that you want to be fishing the most is just the one that inspires confidence in that moment. So on top of this back section, I'm just going to tie in the rear part of a strung saddle hackle in black, just because that pink off the very back of the fly is going to be one of the brighter points in this fly, and everything else is going to have more of a dark look to it. So I might as well start the dark off back here. So off the base of that rear prop, I'm going to tie in some ultra wire. And I tend to use the silver more commonly than anything else, and I just lay it across the body there, giving you a sense of where you want the body to end. It's a nice guide in that way. And then over the top of that, I'm going to grab a decent amount of crinkle mirror flash and just clip it right at the stem there. And this is the olive. And same thing too, I'm just going to lay that across the top and wrap back on there. And then start to bring everything forward. Just leaving your thread right at the very end of that ultra wire. And then bring the crinkle mirror flash straight up, kind of flatten everything out so it's as wide as it's going to be, and start that first wrap. And as you wrap this, each kind of quarter turn, you can readjust your grip on it and pull all that tension out of it, and it just helps give it that nice flat sheen to it. Tie those off. And then come back behind them with that ultra wire. If you have any body showing through the crinkle mirror, you can just use that wire to wrap right over that place if it's showing through there. And right over the body, we're going to start our front station on this fly. So I'll make a loop right here. Hold it in place. And then I'm going to start with some Senyo fusion dubbing in the sky color. That's going to be the dubbing ball here. On top of that, I'm going to have barred predator wrap in the blue color. And the ones that I've got here are the barred silver. And they make them in barred gold too, but I just have a little bit of a preference for the barred silver. And this one I'm going to make it a little more substantial than the last one. And I'm actually going to put some crinkle mirror flash in the front one. Same color we did throughout the body. Some longer fibers there. And then on the very top of that station, I'm going to have Arctic Fox that will hopefully come through the front of the station so that the very front of the station is left pretty dark, which I like. It just gives the whole fly this dark vibe. I'm just going to slide that right into my hand there and then open up the loop and get it all in there. And if it gets awkward as you're putting it in, just kind of readjust everything. I'm going to give it a spin. I'm going to pick everything out. And start to lay that dubbing ball right on the very top of the body. Getting a couple wraps right next to each other here. And trying to make sure as much as I can that after each wrap, I'm pulling everything out, making sure it's not getting stuck down in there. And then just grab that thread and come back and secure it on the way back. And it seems to, more so than if you just had Arctic Fox on dubbing, just really pokes everything out, so much so that it's all trying to come forward. So sometimes I'll even push it all down just so that I can get whatever goes on next on there without those fibers pushing into them. And I'm just going to dub this loop here. That'll hold my ostrich. And you can put your ostrich in your composite loop. I just like the control that you get if you do it by itself. And one little note about ostrich is the thickness of them. Some of the stuff we're seeing is so thin now, which is awesome, but I still do like a lot of the more medium feathers just because they show up more. And they tend to, there's a time where the really thin ones work really well in your fly if you have other materials to fill it out. But these more medium thickness feathers seem to fill out these flies really nice. And just kind of grab that Arctic Fox. And start to wrap, making sure to bend back these stems as you wrap them forward there. tying off both those stems and the loop. There's a couple. So to fill this fly out a little bit, I'm gonna take a pretty hefty guinea collar here in blue. I'm just gonna start from the tip of the fly, tie it in from the tip here, and really pull on that thread as you tie it in. Grab the stem, make sure each wrap that there's not any fibers getting caught in there. And then right over the top of this guinea, I'm going to put 2 feathers of these barred half saddles that we get from Hairline, and we just got these back in stock in a full size run here. And you get quite a bit of choice over what type of feather you want to, how much body you want the feather to have, from these bigger ones in the back to smaller ones all the way through. On this fly, I'm gonna put a couple of these larger ones on here. And I'm actually going to, I don't always, but I'm gonna just clip them in the feather and save them on the saddle. And that way, if I ever want to use the stems of those for collars later on, I have them, and then the tips I can use to go through the body here. I will pull those tips so that they're just lined up there. Strip away some of the base. And you have quite a bit of say over how long you like your feathers to be through the body. For me, I think I like them longer than most folks, where they go close to the end of the profile of the fly, so that barring runs all the way through the fly. Set one off to the right side there, and set this one as its counterpart. And then you can grab the stems and clip them off. I've got this head built up here, and right at the base, I'm going to attach a 5/32 intruder eye. That's just going to come as close to the base of that as you can get. Do some figure 8 wraps, get it locked in place. Don't need to do too many wraps there because we will have some glue to help lock them. And then I'm going to whip finish the fly right behind the eyes. I'll slide the tube off of here. cut the very top off of here. And I like to just pinch my scissors and open that up a little bit, put it through the vise, and then the very last step, just making sure that that tube is nice and secure, as you just burn, you melt the tube back to that last thread wrap. Blow on it, and I like to put mine straight back through the needle and twist it. And then even if something happens with the front of the tube there, if it can fit through that needle, that it's going to be able to hold any tippet material that you'd like to do. And I often will burn the tube before I put any head cement on. And that is a cool little winter steelhead fly using the new barred predator wrap that we have in the shop for both of the stations. It's got the MFC barred ostrich on the end here, tied on a tube fly, aquafly's eyes, and the half saddle on the very top of the fly there. Thank you for tuning in as we tied this winter steelhead fly with some of the new materials that we have here in the shop. I hope it inspires you a little bit just to think outside the box in terms of materials, color combinations that you put together, because I think steelhead, as much as any fish out there, really do allow you to just fish the flies that you like to fish. So color combos that work for you in a lot of situations will work for the fish. So thank you for tuning in. We appreciate it.